That's it. We can go ahead. There's no questions.
Okay. Yeah, no questions, and we're just going to wait to go live.
No questions. We'll keep Jake happy for today.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural meeting of 2021 of the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Committee. Before we start, I just want to welcome alternate director Sue Paulson from the village of Sayward. Welcome.
Thank you.
I believe also we might have alternate director Barb Lewis joining us from Zabalos. I don't think she's quite here yet, but that she'll hopefully be arriving. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge that the meeting here is being conducted on the traditional and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, on whose land I have the privilege of living and farming. And I'd be remiss in not noting recent events that have been happening in light of COVID-19, of racist, I guess, posts that are happening around the region. I just want to affirm that our First Nations are our partners, our brothers and sisters, and I hope all of us as elected officials, when we see that type of activity, that we call it out and we support all the First Nations in our communities. So moving on, I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have no in-camera meeting happening. So adoption of the minutes. Oh, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
That's moved and said. And Lisa, are you okay to? Okay. And apologies, I missed the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a first and second?
Move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Director Lee. And did you get the second?
Second by
Okay.
Wally.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? And that's carried. So we've adopted the agenda and the minutes. And no business arising from the minutes and no petitions or delegations. So we move on to reports. We have the minutes of our Strathcona Waste Management Advisory Committee meeting from December 22nd.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed to the adoption of those minutes? Okay, hearing none.
Excuse me.
Oh, yes.
I was just wondering where the raise the hand symbol is.
Let's see, depending on your device, it can be under panelists. It could be the three dots at the top right corner if you're on an iPad.
Okay, no, I'm on a laptop.
Under participants.
Under participants?
Right at the bottom.
Ah, right. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. I see it now.
Great. And Director Cornfield, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, it was about the request to waive fees for landfill. And I can deal with it later on in the report. It's fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. And I'm just going to give time for people to figure out the raise hands. Were there any other questions on either of the minutes that we passed? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Item number 2, the 2021-2025 proposed financial plan for the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service, function 391 for receipt.
For move receipt.
Moved and seconded by Director Cole-Hamilton. And I'll pass it over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors, and Happy New Year to you all. This report will be presented by Mark Rutten. He'll provide a brief PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the matters. We are addressing some of your concerns and questions of the last meeting and are available to answer any questions that you have today.
Thank you, Russell. Through the chair, we're just waiting for Lisa to bring the presentation up.
If folks can just hold on, technical difficulties. Oh, there.
Just before we get started, you want questions during or at the end, Mark? Or Madam Chair?
I think probably at the end to allow staff to
Okay.
kind of go through their presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All good? Okay.
Okay, and is everybody able to see the presentation on their screens? If I don't hear anyone saying no, then we'll carry on.
Yep. Can you go to the next slide, please? All right, thank you very much. This is our second presentation of the financial plan. This first slide here just summarizes the process for financial planning. And so at the top there, I've indicated that we are presenting the proposed plan today. There is another opportunity to review the proposed financial plan in February, and then the recommended plan in March. This process is guided by a financial planning policy that is specific to the Solid Waste Board. And of course, the Solid Waste Board is the authority for this service. And,
sorry. Apologies.
And today we're looking for a review, of course, but also a final direction. So if there are changes to the plan, that direction would be appropriate today so that we can incorporate that and bring it back for review. This presentation today and the staff report, you'll note that it's really focused on the changes and questions that were asked at the last meeting, but also included is a link to the full financial plan and the report from the December meeting. So please ask any questions on the entire plan, not just on the content of today's meeting, if you have those questions. Next slide, please. So the first item that we addressed in the staff report was a request for some additional information at the December meeting regarding tipping fees and taxation. And so we've done some analysis and pulled together information from 5 other regional districts and put together a table that's in the staff report that compares revenue from tipping fees and revenue from taxation. So this graph here summarizes those 2 items. And you can see that there's quite a variation between regional districts. For example, our region collects a lot of tipping fee revenue and a lot of taxation revenue, whereas some others collect more taxation revenue than tipping fee revenue. And in fact, one region that we compared to collects only taxation revenue and has no tipping fees. So, for various reasons, there's a wide variety of revenue collection across these regions. They all have their own specific reasons for doing things this way. And it's just interesting to note some of these differences. Can you advance, please, Lisa? So the next slide is a summary of a column that we included in the table, which then takes that total revenue, so the tipping fee revenue plus the taxation revenue, and compares it on a per capita basis. Because some of these regions are much different in size than we are. And this helps to show that on a per capita basis, our region compares closely with several other regions. Some are higher and some are lower, but it's interesting to note that all of them are sort of in the same ballpark. Of course, differences are appropriate because each regional district is in a different place and has a different model for service delivery, has different environmental requirements. And so, it is appropriate to see some difference. Next slide, please. So the other changes that were requested at the last meeting, we have addressed the Sayward bulky waste cleanup issue, and the budget does include $6,000 for that item. Also, what was discussed at the last meeting was an interest by the board to maintain the educational opportunities at the Compost Ed Center in Campbell River. That is also included. And there was direction at the last meeting for staff to work with the village to optimize the service levels there. And we're doing that. Next slide, please. One other change that staff are recommending to the budget is we are recommending that we increase the budget for the bin wall project. So this is a project that was approved in 2020, late in the budgeting process, early in the year. We did complete much of the design work in 2020. And that design work is leading to a recommendation to expand the scope of this project. So what we initially asked for was a replacement of the bin wall. And the current bin wall is a 4-bay bin wall. In the past, we've had customers come to the landfill and park side by side at the same bin and deposit their materials. But with COVID, we've implemented a social distancing requirement where only one vehicle can be at each bin at a time. This, in addition to heavily increased traffic over the last couple of years, and plus just a growing community and a desire to do a better job of diversion, we're recommending a larger bin wall structure be built instead of just an in-kind replacement of the current bin wall. So what we're suggesting here is a 7-bay bin wall. It does allow for greater social distancing, which is a current requirement, may not be in the future, but something to think about nowadays. It also allows for the placement of additional bins for better separation of materials. And of course, it provides increased capacity so that we can grow with the community in the future. So that project, although it was included, we've increased the budget up to 770. It was, sorry, I believe it was 350 or 400 what was in there before. Next slide, please. So just a couple of, so those were the key changes that were discussed at the last meeting, plus the capital project was one that we brought forward as staff. The next slide here is just kind of a quick high-level summary of the budget overall. Taxation is planned to be reduced from 6 to 5 million. That's what's included in the proposed plan. That equates to $80 in annual tax for a $500,000 home. Tipping fees remain at $140. There's no new staffing requested for 2021. The operational savings of $447,000 are recommended to be allocated to reserves, and that was discussed at the last meeting in some detail. And operating costs do increase in 2022 with the implementation of the organics facility. Next slide, please. And just a summary of capital spending. This is not the entire capital table, which is included in the staff report, but just to highlight that capital spending remains quite significant in this service, especially over the next couple of years, with the 3 big projects listed there: organics, the landfill closure, and Cell 2. And a table included here just to show that our debt servicing does increase significantly over the next couple of years and then settles out. And we'll be in a place where we don't have a lot of capital work in the future, but we'll be servicing the debt that we're incurring right now as we get through these big projects. Next slide, please. So the next steps, the next opportunity to review the plan is at the February meeting. At that time, we will present all of the capital project carry forwards, and we'll also have the final surplus from 2020, which we can report out on. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you have on this staff report.
Thank you. And we do have some questions. I see Director Anderson.
Thank you, staff, for this. Just an ongoing question with regards to toxic waste cleanups in rural communities. I know a number of years ago there were toxic waste sort of days. I don't know if cleanup is right, but a specific day where people can bring toxic materials to a transfer station. And then that shifted a couple of years ago. And I'm just wondering if there's plans to do other days like that. I know that they were very well used and valued in the community.
Yeah, thank you. So at many of our transfer stations, we do have a household hazardous waste program. And there are specific days during the week when that program is open and available to the public. So most, hazardous substances can be brought on those days and dealt with. I'm not sure if you're talking about something outside of that program that happens just very occasionally and deals with other products that might not be accepted. I might ask Jesse to jump in if he has information about those programs that we may have offered in the past.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So since that those events that occurred, we have, for instance, on Cortez Island, have a full product care depot, which covers the majority of anything that's covered on that you can purchase as a household resident, including waste oil, antifreeze, the containers that go with that, paint, anything like that, pesticides. So we have that. It's available every day that transfer station's open, and we have those at Gold River as well, our 2 regional facilities, and Hornby Island. In Tassos and Zabalas, we have hosted those events, and they weren't well attended, unfortunately, even with that. So, but we are doing collections there because some stuff's getting dropped off in those communities. So we do it biannually, just go out there and stuff that's collected at the public works yard, we pick up and dispose of properly. So.
Great. I hadn't aware that program was so broadly implemented across the region. Thank you kindly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see Director Cole Hamilton, and then I think I have Director Arbor, Cornfield, and Abram. So Director Cole Hamilton.
Great, thanks very much, Chair. And thanks, Mark, for this report. I've appreciated seeing the results of the review of tipping fees and taxation. And I know that one of the concerns that kind of comes in along with tipping fees is illegal dumping, and the higher the tipping fees go, the greater the likelihood of that. I was wondering if there was any information about a correlation between that, whether, say, for example, the RD of East Kootenays, which has no tipping fees, sees a dramatic reduction in illegal dumping, and the couple that are higher than us, the Sunshine Coast and Cowichan Valley, whether relative levels are higher there, and just how tight the relationship is between tipping fees and the kind of illegal dumping that we were concerned about.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So we did not follow up specifically with the community that doesn't have any tipping fees to ask those kinds of questions. We could, and it would be interesting to learn more about that. We do know that there is definitely a relationship between tipping fees and illegal dumping, and also between tipping fees and a potential for waste leakage. And that has been seen in other regions where if the tipping fee gets too high and there are available alternatives for collectors, that they might use those alternatives and use them in a big way, to the point where revenue for the main service is quite impacted. So there's a relationship, but I can't speak to the specifics about whether the taxation only model has a big impact on illegal dumping and makes a big improvement.
Thank you. I may ask a short follow-up just on the illegal dumping issue. The waste leakage issue. I realize a lot of that would have to do with geography of how close a neighboring jurisdiction might be, and being on the islands, neighboring jurisdictions aren't that far away, especially if one's traveling south. Do we have any information on the relationship between tipping fees and waste leakage, or is that also not been explored yet?
Yeah, what we're doing is we are keeping a close eye on our neighboring regions and communicating with them often. And I'm not trying to control, the exact same tipping fee in each region, but just talking to each other and making sure that we understand whether or not there's a potential for leakage and trying to avoid that potential. So what you'll see right now across Alberta, Clayoquot, Nanaimo Regional District, and us is very comparable tipping fees to specifically avoid that waste leakage potential.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think I have Director Arbor. Do you still have?
Yeah, thanks. Just comments, I guess. I'm really happy with this budget, actually. So I thought I'd say it. I think that it incorporates well our intent around the renewal plan and trying to make sure that we're keeping things in check and also we're achieving a lot of good capital project. I do want to show support for the Binwald project and the increased request this morning. I think that's a good one. I was up at the Waste Management Center this morning, actually, and it's very smooth there, but I think the more we put into the ease and as you say, with COVID in mind, I think that's a good project to complete. So yeah, generally, I just thought I'd say that. In regards to just a quick comment following Director Cole Hamilton, regarding illegal dumping, which continues to be a problem in Area A, and I'm sure across rural areas, across our jurisdictions. The other side that we can look at, because at the end of the day, the thing I was reminded this morning is tipping fees are not that large. I paid my $10 and I had a bit of stuff, and I'm not sure that for people it's maybe a matter of principle why they do illegal dumping or ease of not having to drive anywhere. So the other side of if we want to do increased efforts on that is probably to look at the size of the penalty for those who get caught and look at a skyrocketing of that. Not a lot of them get caught, but those who don't, sometimes knowing that you could face a very, very hefty penalty could dissuade the public to stop that really upsetting practice. So yeah, thank you. Overall, we're on the financial plan, and I just want to say, yeah, I'm really happy with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a number of questions, so I was going to just ask two, and then you can have other directors speak and always come back to me.
Okay.
If that's okay. On the comparison table, Mark, when we looked at Cowichan, I thought my understanding was that Cowichan shipped their garbage out down to the States.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so when we compare, is that the Cowichan Valley Regional District that does that?
Yes.
Okay, because when I look at the table and it shows a comparison, they're charging $148 per metric ton, I guess, as tipping fee, plus 5 million, but they don't operate a landfill, so it's sort of an awkward comparison.
Yeah, they still have these same obligations, to dispose of the waste in a environmentally responsible way. So their method of doing that is to ship the waste to the US, to a large landfill in the States. But the shipping and the final tipping fee that they pay at that US landfill is costly, and that's what creates a high tipping fee and a high rate of taxation for their region. So they're not managing a landfill, but they still incur some significant costs.
Well, I noticed we didn't take any, like Nanaimo is one that, what are they at, 170,000 in population, somewhere around there?
Yes,
and we normally talk about Nanaimo, but I didn't see them here.
Yeah, and one of the things that we tried to do in this comparison was, and it's not easy because, like I said during the presentation, we're all in different places. All of these regional districts, they have their own unique history.
Yep.
Their own unique way that they used to deal with solid waste. And some can have multiple small communities, multiple small landfills that were active in the past that are slowly being closed and consolidated, like our approach. And so that's what we kind of tried to look for. One thing about the regional district of Nanaimo is they have one single landfill for the entire region and one transfer station. And all the waste from Qualicum, Parksville, and Lanceville and North Nanaimo goes to one transfer station. All of the waste from South Nanaimo and Cassidy and Cedar goes directly to the landfill. And so they have a very efficient model of transportation and final disposal compared to us and compared to many other regions that have multiple landfills and a lot of movement of waste around the service area.
Okay,
So,
no,
yeah,
you covered it off. I just,
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that I hadn't messed up on something.
Yeah.
My second question, on the capital projects, we're showing a leachate treatment capacity upgrade. And if my recollection is not, sorry, was it there was excess capacity because don't we treat the leachate from the compost? Excuse me, this.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. And I can speak to this. So we have learned a lot about leachate treatment in the last couple of years and about how much it rains on the east coast of Vancouver Island. So our original system was installed to treat 250 cubic meters a day. That's the design capacity of the treatment plant and the permit requirement that we have. And in order to do that, like we do know that we're going to generate more than that on some days when it rains heavily for days on end. The leachate generation actually exceeds that daily capacity. But ahead of the treatment plant, we have a large 10,000 cubic meter storage tank. And what we've been managing aggressively over the last couple of years is just, these storm events are testing the limits of the storage tank, and it's filling up very quickly during a storm event, and then we're processing at 250 cubic meters a day. If you look at it on an annual basis, we've got lots of capacity, but addressing the peak flow events has been a little bit tricky. So what we put in the plan is there are some very easy upgrades to make to the treatment plant. They're not very costly, and we like to go ahead and investigate those and possibly implement them. It wouldn't like double the capacity of the plant, but it does take it from 250 to say 280 or 290, something like that. And it just provides us a little bit more buffer during these storm events. Also during the Cell 2 project, which we're just starting the engineering on now, we'll be taking a really close look at our equalization storage ahead of the treatment plant to see if we do in fact have the right amount there, or if we need more as we start to expand the size of the landfill footprint. So that's what's happening there. On an annual basis, we do have extra capacity, but it's really managing through these peak flow events.
Great. Thanks, Director Cornfield. I know you probably have more questions, but I'm going to move to Director Abram and then Director Lee, and then we'll come back.
Thank you, Chair Hamir. Mark, I just wanted to say, first of all, that on the tax requisition issue and the reserve of 447,000 being inserted into reserve rather than going to taxation, I'm still in favor of doing that. Moving it there, I realize you don't have it there and you're probably not going to go there, but that's my wish. And secondly, question, on those bin walls that you had to add, and you mentioned that, primarily a COVID-driven issue. Are we available? Is there anything available to us federally or provincially under COVID relief to be able to add that money to our budget because of the fact that we are reacting to something that was out of our control?
Yeah, thank you. There have been some recent grant programs related to COVID relief. And so we did take a very close look at those and the criteria for them. And we thought that this project had kind of a loose tie towards them, but not a really strong tie. So in the end, staff here recommended that we not apply for a grant for this project. That there's other projects that are likely, much more closely aligned that provide benefit to a larger part of the population and more of a kind of direct benefit than this project. But it did have a tie, and we did take a look at those programs, but none of them aligned really closely with this project, and we didn't think it was likely to be successful. So we didn't suggest moving ahead.
If I may have a follow-up, I understand what you're saying, of course, but I guess my suggestion or wish would be that we always apply for everything that's available, whether we get it or not, and whether or not it is, totally perfect in its application. It's better to apply and be turned down than not apply and not get. So I just, I'm wondering why we wouldn't just apply for in a more shotgun fashion if the money is available, if it's different programs, or if it's, if it's all coming out of the same program, then that's a different story. But if it's various programs, then it seems like you should apply to all of them. That's just my uneducated guess.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just checking with Mariah Ford, who is on the line, and she may add to this. She knows a little bit more about the criteria associated with this grant. It wasn't just COVID related, and perhaps Mariah can provide a little bit more information.
You may still be on mute, Mariah.
Apologies. To the chair, just to speak to the grant, there was a recent COVID-19 infrastructure grant released. We did look corporately at what the kind of most aligned and high priority project was for this grant. As the RD, we are able to apply for one regional or sub-regional grant. And we determined through our review that the upgrades to the Comox Valley Sports Center was most aligned and also the most impact for our application. And so with that grant, we're looking at a project between $2 to $4 million. That was quite an impact and quite a good alignment. So that is the grant that we are looking for that application.
Okay, we'll move on. I have Director Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that concerns me, the board was very clear that they wanted to see the tax burden alleviated for our citizens, and they reduced the budget by $1 million. And what concerns me, though, is not so much 2021, but the overall 5-year financial plan, because the intent of the board was to reduce the burden on taxpayers. But what's going to happen according to this 5-year plan is that, for example, engineering fees in function 366 are going to jump from 285 in the 2021 budget to 565 in 2022. Other professional fees, line item 387 will jump from 240,000 in the 2021 budget, which is 60,000 more than we usually spend. And then it doubles almost to 2,700 in 2022. We're going to go out and borrow $1 million, like we cut $1 million out of the budget for 2021. Now we're going to go borrow $1 million, and the taxpayers will pay a premium for that borrowing by debt and interest charges in subsequent years. So that kind of goes against the intent of what the board was trying to do, in my opinion. And because I think our taxpayers will still be suffering the consequences of COVID-19 into 2022. And I would like to see the staff, and I know we've done this in previous years. Our new finance manager was not here when we did it in previous years, but we have had requests for the financial staff to look at smoothing the budgets over the 5-year plan, so that we're not having these like extreme peaks and troughs from year to year, so that the taxpayers can depend on, okay, my solid waste charge on my taxes is, I can expect to pay this, you know, for the next foreseeable future, and not to have it jumping around like that. So just pointing out the few that I noticed in the budget, like engineering fees, other professional fees, and wanting to know if we can simply review that, and if we can't reduce the budgets, smooth the numbers over the 5-year plan.
Madam Chair, just to respond that when the board gave us the direction to review this service in a COVID lens and look at things and respond to your interest in the potential of a cost savings, and just diving into our expenses and long-term plans to make sure matters were as required, we really did that analysis. As it is presented now, the taxation is a smooth line. It's not up and down. Our expenses through various areas obviously will change as projects do over time. But I just want to assure you that our finance staff and our engineering team, in developing this strategy for you, was very mindful of ensuring that there weren't ups and downs and peaks and valleys when it came to the taxpayer. And also just want to say that a strategy that looks at reserves, taxation, and long-term debt is something that is all of those are tools to help us achieve that over time. And I know that for a business or for a landowner, debt is something to be avoided. But the one thing that debt and borrowing does for us, and the one advantage we have, is very low interest rates. But what debt can help us do is ensure that the peaks and valleys of taxes going up and down are not as such, but are smooth. And also it ensures that the asset that we are paying for is the payment of that is paid over time for those that gain the advantage of utilizing that asset. So for local governments, debt is not always a bad thing. It is a mechanism that we can use to ensure that there is a smooth transition, and there are not the peaks and valleys of taxation, and those that benefit from the capital investment are the ones that pay for it over time.
So just as a subsequent to that information, thank you. Can we have some kind of idea of tax impacts from year to year in the 5-year plan, if we leave things exactly as they are?
Mark, can you just confirm the tax rate for the next 5 years in the financial plan as proposed?
Yeah, the tax rate is $5 million for 2021 through 2025. So no change over 5 years for the taxation amount, taxation revenue.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I have Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to go back a little bit to Director Abrams' comment, and I wish to concur with his query as to why we are not submitting grant applications for this. Appreciate the comments from Ms. Fort. However, I'm a little troubled that the Comox Valley RD would be making a decision on a grant, on the issue of a grant application on behalf of the Comox Strathcona Regional Solid Waste, which is a much larger area and a larger service. They are two separate entities, even though one is sort of staffed and administratively handled through the Comox Valley. But I think it's a separation of church and state. I also think there's an opportunity when we put in for grant applications that we may not meet 100% of the criteria for. It flags our application to those that we're submitting to that may be able to provide us other opportunities that we can look for. So it gets us out there and circulated, and I never think that that's a bad thing. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I can respond to that. And we really put our mind to this as staff as to what we would recommend to both boards, whether bringing one forward to you and or the other board. I'd like to just back up and say there are a lot of grant opportunities coming to us, and it is a ton of work to make application for these. We can't just do it all. And unfortunately, the grant opportunities that are coming at us are coming with very short timelines and a ton of requirements in terms of shovel ready or otherwise. We're being inundated by opportunities. We want to take the best advantage of them. And we need to be mindful of what has the best potential for the biggest bang for the buck. Unfortunately, when it comes to the grant opportunities for Comox Strathcona waste management, it is also tied to the Comox Valley Regional District. The limitation on one applies to the corporation, the Comox Valley Regional District. I don't think that we could qualify for based on this criteria for one for both. So when staff were presented with this grant opportunity, we looked at the criteria, and it's more than just a COVID lens. It's all about asset management and a variety of other criteria. Looking at the full realm of the criteria, the sports center had the best fit. We did evaluate the potential of the bin wall as well. The other thing with the bin wall is that it was of a lower value, as well as not having the amount of criteria. So it was a determination of staff as to what we would recommend, and that's the rationale for why we went forward on that. We're also very mindful that probably Campbell River and Strathcona Regional District are also taking advantage of these grant opportunities. So in the end, there will probably be benefit of these grants to both organizations regardless.
If I can just follow up, I certainly appreciate, Mr. Dyson, that it is a challenge with multiple opportunities for the work to be able to put grants together. But I am very concerned where the Comox Valley RD is making determinations on a Comox Strathcona service. I don't find that appropriate at all.
And I just wanted to clarify, sorry if I didn't, Comox Valley Regional District did not make a decision on your behalf. If you as a board want to direct us to proceed with a grant, we can do that. That's up to you, the board. We just have not come forward with a recommendation to you at the staff level because we didn't think that it was the best fit and had the best chance. Having said that, that is our position. If this board wants to give me direction in another way and say that we should be applying for this, we'll do our best to try and do that.
Thank you.
I have second time speakers, directors, Cornfield and Arbor. Director Cornfield.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try and make this one, I think it's fairly simple, but when I went to Appendix A, page 7, which is the budget forms, and I went down to page 7 of 11 on our screens, but page 4 of the report, it shows us with 2 million surplus is the way I read it. 2.081434. And it says it gets transferred, or the way I'm reading it, it shows that it goes to the general revenue fund of of $2 million. I'm assuming that's general revenue for the solid waste function. But when I go back to the start of the table and I look at the revenue sources, where it says surplus prior year shows $1.1 million for 2020, but it only shows 160,000. Would not the surplus shown at the bottom go into surplus from the prior years?
Yes, one thing I mentioned, I'm not sure if it was clear, is that the next iteration of the budget, we will be finalizing the surplus carry forward and bringing it into 2021 revenue. So as you indicated that.
Okay, so it just hasn't happened yet.
It just hasn't happened yet, but it will
Okay.
happen in the next round. And actually, Kevin DeVille is going to further explain the process.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was reading the tables right, and so thank you.
Okay, yeah, through the chair to the directors. Yeah, so currently we're still processing invoicing for 2020, so we haven't finalized those final surplus carry forward figures yet. So director is correct. We will be continuing to look at those over the next several weeks. Once that number is a lot clearer, we will then be sitting down with the engineering staff and assessing what the final surplus numbers are expected to be, and then we'll incorporate those into the recommended version of the financial plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Director Arbour.
Thank you. I just want to address Dr. Abram and Dr. Adams' comments around the bin wall project and the grant opportunities. And you know, I appreciate the point that they're making around what gets put forward, so to speak. And I also appreciate the staff's advice around the likelihood of grants being successful. I think at our respective regional districts, we are aware that there's often even interdepartmental tossing around those grant opportunities. So I do agree you have to look at what has the best chance of success. You know, we could assign monies to transit. The way I'm looking at this particular one too is that we will have a tax saving, and we've identified savings to the ratepayers this year in this service. And to me, I think when looking at the whole of the financial plan, that contribution works. In terms of process, however, I do agree that there's probably a political consideration in regards to this particular service because we share it. So perhaps in the future, it may be good. We do have 2 co-chairs now as part of the service, so it might be good to do a little check-in with staff when those opportunities arrive that could be relevant, so that at least we have some representation that's aware of the tossing and departmental debates around what gets submitted or not. That could be a solution. But overall, I think I'm really thrilled that we are in a position to both reduce the requisition and also complete a small project for the benefit of residents in the light of COVID.
Right. Thanks, Director Arbour. I'm going to call the question now, as I don't see any other hands up on receipt. Is anyone opposed to receipt of the proposed financial plan? Okay, hearing and seeing none, that is adopted. And there is a recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
I see Hillian and Lee. Okay, any comments? Seeing none, is anyone opposed to the recommendation? Oh, sorry, Director Cornfield.
Yeah, on this capital budget, which I believe includes the cell 2 design. Yes. Can staff explain why it costs so much to design the cell? Like that's $800,000.
Yeah. So that is the budget amount. So it's quite typical for a capital project, capital infrastructure project, to budget approximately 10% of the total value of the project as engineering fees, both for the detailed design and for the construction management. And so that's what we've budgeted. The actual cost for design, will likely be a little bit different, but in line with that amount. And the overall project is expected to be around the $8 million mark for the construction of cell 2. So that's why the numbers are that way. And
Okay, so it's not based on an actual description of work involved. I just thought if we just finished doing the design and building of cell 1, that cell 2 design should be almost like a cookie cutter.
it's a little bit of both. It's, I just explained the sort of 10% rule,
Yeah.
but it's not just that. It's also based on our experience from cell 1. But it isn't, there are some benefits to having designed cell 1 and, being able to use some of those same standards and concepts, but it is a standalone design for cell 2. And in fact, it could be a completely separate consultant because it is a competitive process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Asked and answered.
All right, thank you. So we have the recommendation that the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board endorse the Plan 2020 capital procurement outlined in Table 2. Is anyone opposed to that recommendation?
Abram.
Okay, we have Abram. Okay, so that is carried. And moving on to item 3, the request to waive fees for Campbell River residents' yard waste drop-off, report dated January 5th for receipt.
Motion receive.
Director Unger.
Go.
And second?
Second, Minions.
Minion, thank you. And back to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Sarah Willey, Solid Waste Analyst, is here to provide a brief presentation on this matter and answer any of your questions.
Thank you through the CAO to the Chair. So in response to the letter from the City of Campbell River, staff undertook analysis on the yard waste and grass clippings that we have been receiving at the Campbell River Waste Management Center over 2020 and compared that with historicals. We have seen a significant increase in traffic in 2020 as a result of the closure of the depot in the City of Campbell River that was servicing residents and allowing them to drop off yard waste for free throughout the year. The Campbell River staff have assisted the city by accepting the consolidated loads that have come from the curbside pickup. And we've been receiving that material and handling it and taking it to Pacific Waste, where we do pay a tipping fee to take that material to Pacific Waste. We've also seen an increase in the small vehicle traffic that has come with yard waste. We all know 2020 was a bumper year for people being in their yards. And so we have compared that increase in Campbell River to the increase that we saw in Comox. And we did not see the same level of increase. So it was a triple the number of small vehicles in Campbell River and only about a 16% increase in Comox at our waste management facility there. So certainly some of that can be attributed to the closure of the depot. Well, we certainly understand the city's values in wanting to provide a good service and the same level of service that they have to their residents. There are some operational concerns with waiving the $10 minimum charge for residents of the City of Campbell River at the Campbell River Waste Management Facility. The staff at the scales would be required to identify people that are coming from within city limits. Currently, that's not something that they have to do. So that may cause conflict for them in people not willing to provide justification of where they live. Somebody may be coming from outside the city limits and having to pay that minimum and learn that their friend and neighbor in the city no longer has to pay that minimum. As well, that would encourage further use of the facility. And the footprint of that facility is significantly smaller than that of our Comox facility. And we're limited in our ability to divert materials and keep them segregated. The most efficient way for successful diversion of yard waste, staff feel, is through the curbside program that is offered to City of Campbell River residents for 8 or 9 months of the year. That is in line with our future objectives of year-round curbside service for city residents that will be commingled with food scraps and be sent to the organics facility in the future. And as well, the handling of materials that come to the Campbell River Waste Management Center in those consolidated loads is much simplified compared to the individual loads that people bring. So further incentivizing individual loads rather than consolidated loads by eliminating that $10 fee is not in line with a good, efficient operation. And we don't feel would significantly increase the diversion of the material, given that they have free opportunities at the curbside, unlimited currently. So I'm happy to answer any questions with that, but our recommendation is to maintain the fee at this time of $10 for minimum charge. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And we do have a question from Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hammer. I'm not sure if the question should be here or maybe to a member of the City of Campbell River, but it's throughout the report. I could not find any place in there that did not mention for the citizens of Campbell River. So I'd like to know if that was meant to include the area residents from A, B, C, and D electoral areas in the Strathcona Regional District, or if it was just missed and didn't get put in. That'd be the first part of the question, and then I'll explain why. So could I get an answer to that, please?
In response to the letter received from the City of Campbell River, the waiving of fees was specific for residents of the City of Campbell River and not for electoral area residents of Strathcona region.
Okay, so one of the reasons that this has become more important at this point is we also have a UBCM grant opportunity that we have taken advantage of and gotten approval for chipping of this type of waste throughout Quadra Island. And there happens to be a ridiculous clause in there that says that all of the chips have to be removed from Quadra Island by truck and brought to a facility in Campbell River. So, this is, it boggles everybody's mind because they want those chips. People on islands that do farming, gardening, animal litter, etc., use chips, and there's no reason why they should have to be trucked off at higher cost, ferry fees, transportation costs, fuel costs, etc., and then landfill fees or transfer fees at Campbell River. So either we have to get that UBCM criteria changed, or we have to lobby Campbell River to include the waiver of fees for the electoral areas that are going to be shipping more product than they are now.
Does staff want to comment on that? I think that's a fire reduction or a risk reduction around fire grant that Director Abrams is speaking of.
Yeah, Director Abrams can probably confirm that. That sounds like the criteria that we're faced with here with respect to our fire program as well. And if I could just take this moment to say, here it is, another crazy criteria imposed on local government in order for them to get funds to provide services to them. The previous debate regarding the application of grant funding. I know this isn't the place for this, but just to put it out there, I'm just wondering whether local governments needs a really good conversation with the provincial government with respect to the grant programs, the tight timelines, the competitive nature of them, and the constraints that is imposing on local governments to deliver these programs. But if you want to discuss that more later at a different time, I'm open to help and share some information with you that's relevant.
Well, if I may, as a subsequent, I would like to request that we embark upon that conversation as soon as possible, because this is, going to be a substantial amount of money to all local governments. It's absolutely insane that we would truck usable waste, and it is the fire reduction program you're talking about. You're right, Russ. And if we're trying to do something positive for fire reduction and at the same time producing a usable product, it's completely crazy to me to then have to pay the money that we have gotten from a grant, have to go and pay extra money to ship it somewhere to dispose of it and possibly take up more room in our landfills, which then costs us more money by use of the landfills. So it's all ass backwards. Sorry.
That's all right. I think we were all equally frustrated. I don't know if staff can confirm that chip material would be going to the Campbell River site, or if I'm not sure. Yeah.
It could be hauled to the Campbell River Waste Management Facility for further shipping to Pacific Wood Waste, or it could be hauled directly to a facility like Pacific Wood Waste for composting.
Okay. I do have Director Adams next in the queue, and then Cornfield, and then Director Grieve.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the report from staff. However, I respectfully disagree and will not be supporting it. The city of Campbell River, for a number of years, while patiently waiting for the regional organics facility to be built, which has been unfortunately delayed, and very pleased to see it finally moving ahead, but still won't be around for a while. So the facility that we had and the lease had expired and was not renewed by the proponent was for the city of Campbell River. And my concern now is that what we were asking for is to waive the minimal charge for a temporary period of time until the regional organics facility is finally built to be able to receive and accommodate these materials. But by not waiving the fee, my concern is that there will be illegal dumping in roadsides on back streets and in rural areas that will increase the environmental and fire hazards throughout the area, which will create even more problems. This isn't a big dollar ask. It's peanuts in comparison to the regional solid waste budget. And again, it's only for an interim period of time. So with that, I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Director Adams. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure if everyone fully understands what the program was that the city of Campbell River operated. Oh, it was around 2011, 2010, when we brought it in, and working with Terra. Was to deal with diverting organics away from the landfill. And that was the yard waste. A lot of the public use is prunings from shrubs and trees on property. The current curbside yard waste pickup has quite a few criteria about length and diameter, and it's not as easy, but and it worked for a long time, but it's expensive. It was $200,000 plus that the city of Campbell River contributed, and we were the sole contributor to that program with MTerra. As Director Adams and our mayor said, the lease was not renewed. We looked for alternate locations for it. Couldn't find any, which meant that it would then now go into the landfill. Landfill space is expensive too. So for years, almost 10 years, we've been diverting all those organics and prunings and trimmings from the landfill at no cost to the solid waste function. It was something that the city of Campbell River did. And in between, with no options for doing that, you're going to see an increase going to the landfill, whether it's people going and grudgingly paying the $10 minimum fee to drop off their prunings, or they're going to go and dump it on the back roads and into the other areas. And that was the problem that we had tried to get under control. So I'm not sure. I don't think the cost is that huge when it's shared over the entire service area. It was put in there as Campbell River residents only because as a city, we paid for the entire previous program that ran for almost 10 years at no cost to the Comox Strathcona solid waste. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Director Grieve.
Thank you, Chair Hamir. I won't belabor this conversation, but I would point out that in a recent provincial election that our two regional districts are now represented by Josie Michelle and Ronna Ray, who all have extensive experience in local government. So why don't we just send them all a little email about the criteria and the tight timelines for these grants? Because I think we get a sympathetic ear from those three. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. And just a question for staff, just reviewing the report. There's a quantity mentioned, 5,876 tons accepted in 2018 at the Campbell River drop off. But the only number in terms of volume that I can see for the waste management site in Campbell River is the 220, where they mentioned 500 tons delivered. Are those comparable numbers?
Through the CAO, the numbers from 2018 reported by MTerra are volumetric estimates based on how full the truck is when it's delivered. And so there may be some discrepancy in that 5,000, sorry, I don't have it exactly in front of me, but over 5,000 tons that they reported. So that value came from the city of Campbell River, from their contractor MTerra. Our values are scaled values for customers going over. They may be underreported slightly. If customers have a small amount of yard waste, or certainly grass clippings because they're free, and they also have garbage with them, they may elect to not go over the scale twice. If their tonnage of garbage, if they just have a small amount, isn't going to exceed that $10 minimum, then the weight would be captured entirely as garbage, but they would segregate the material when they're on site, putting grass clippings and yard trimmings in one area, garbage in another, and just pay for garbage. So our weights may be slightly low, and I'd suggest MTerra's weights are perhaps not as accurate.
Okay, and just to follow up on that then, but if, on the, just ballparking it, we're looking at probably 10 times the amount at one site as at the other. And just a question to the board and the staff, where do you think that extra amount is going, as it's been suggested by previous directors. I think it's going into illegal dumping or in piles at residences, waiting for delivery, which is also going to result in a fire hazard at the residence, and also associated rats and rodents and that sort of thing associated with yard waste. As a past landscaper and garden maintenance company owner, you know, I know quite a bit about this, and I've spent a lot of time around both our facility and facilities. And, you know, when you do large scale pruning and garden maintenance, it's far more material that's generated than is appropriate to put out at the curbside. And this is going to continue even with the future compost facility. So this is not an issue that's going to go away. And if we're going to want to keep the illegal dumping of garden waste in the surrounding areas, and I got to say that generally when you're dumping yard waste, quite often you're going to be hiding garbage underneath it. So it's just going to be it's not a cost saving at all. What else? Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
Thank you. I mean, clearly this is a complex issue that I don't have full grasp of, but it seems like Campbell River has been taking Oman's weight for quite a long time. And I'm not concerned about the interim cost aspect of this. I think, in fact, perhaps the solid waste service should have been bearing the cost for the last decade of Campbell River's diversion efforts. But I do understand an operational concern around providing fee waiver for some customers and not others, and that being tricky. I wonder if there isn't a possibility of between now and when the organics facility is up and running, just waiving all costs. But I don't know that we should be trying to fix this on the fly. And so I'm wondering the value of referring this back to staff and asking for a report on some different options for our consideration at this time, based on the discussion so far. So I would move that if staff thought that was appropriate.
We're still on receipt, but when it comes time for the recommendation,
sure,
we can have that discussion. Thanks. I have first-time speakers still, Director Lee and Arbor, and then I can go back to Director Abram.
Thank you. This is through the chair to our staff. So I understand that Berrien Vale in Campbell River at the landfill there moves yard waste material to Pacific Wood Waste at a cost of $65,000 per year. So what kind of revenue do we get or do we project generating with the $10 yard waste drop-off fee? Does it cover our costs, or is it subsidized by the whole area, the whole regional solid waste service? $65,000, does that cover the entire cost of it, projected to cover it for people wanting to take their yard waste to the Campbell River transfer station?
Thank you for the question. Through the CAO, the $65 per ton amount has been set to cover the costs of the tipping fee for disposal, the trucking fee, as well as the staff costs for handling and receiving that fee. It does get a little tricky when the $10 minimum comes into play. That's a more difficult thing to estimate. But again, a customer can come in with both garbage and yard waste and pay that single $10 fee. So it's more the $65 per ton, which is significantly less than the garbage tipping fee that has been set to both cover costs and to incentivize customers to divert.
Okay, and I had one tiny little subsequent. So I don't believe that you know, not having the Terra site at Willis Road is that much different than driving your load out to the Campbell River transfer station. It's not that much further. It's just, you know, down the road. So I don't think it's an onerous burden for everyone to pay their $10 drop-off fee at the transfer station. And I think that everyone should be treated with equality in this service. We are a federation, and we should be all ensuring that we're looking out for each other, and it isn't one jurisdiction versus another. And I just wanted to know too, when people drop off yard waste at our transfer stations, is there any way of redirecting those organic materials that are invasive? Like say somebody drops off a load that has Japanese knotweed or Himalayan blackberry or something like that in it. Is there a different facility where that stuff goes to?
Invasive species, if identified, are asked to be buried in the landfill to try and prevent the continued spread.
Okay, so it just goes to the landfill. There's no other facility we take it to be incinerated or?
No, it would be disposed of as waste as opposed to composted.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't see there should be a concern about illegal dumping, but that would be my only concern. If people do illegal dumping of organic waste, that it could inspire these invasive species to be spread around the countryside, and we don't want that.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. Director Arbor.
Thank you. And I mean, I understand that the intent of the City of Campbell River Council's resolution is to provide a little bit of relief and comparable service to what existed in the past. But as a matter of policy, it's a little bit like when we had the Gold River request and in relation to Hornby and other places, is I think once you open the door to those kind of consideration, then it will spread. And you already see the electoral areas in the Strathcona asking if they would be included in this. And then second, I'm sure this would spread to the Comox Valley if we're not applying a tipping fee for loads like that at Campbell River. Why should we in the Comox Valley, and et cetera, et cetera. I've also heard from many Strathcona members in the past about the need to have a user pay philosophy to this service and not just supported by taxation. So that's something that we've heard pretty often. And I think this is not really probably paying for it all. There's probably a significant taxation that pays for the services, but having a $10, I think, as a matter of policy, while we go towards the organic facility and creating that stability will not lead to further discussion across the system around fairness and distribution of costs. So on that basis, and then if we add the operational consideration that staff outlined in their report, and you know, having to check where do people live and all the rest of that, all the other considerations, I'll find it hard to support the requests from the city, but at the same time, you know, I think the key message there, I noticed in the letter that it's you know, council wishes to continue and to provide the same basic service at no additional cost for the residents. I think you still have the story of the overall requisition lowering amount for the service this coming year. So you still have a good story to tell your residents that for little things like that, we're still saving money at the end of the day. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the time. I just want to make sure that we're coming around to second time speakers and that you're providing some new information. So I have Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is. It's hopefully we could get this in time for the next financial review, but there's a potential, I think, if drop off of organics like yard waste, you're generally not charged for at the landfill. If you include prunings, trimmings, all that kind of stuff, yes, you are. Charge $10 because I know I utilize that myself. Would there be any value, and perhaps CAT staff can come back at the next meeting on having a drop-off area like we do with our recyclables ahead of the scales? And that would be my only other recommendation, would be to have that in front of the scales to avoid it. Then there's no need to check people's residency or anything else that would be done on the outside, much like the bin wall expansion project for the Pigeon Lake. And this will be our transfer station when our landfill closes in 2023, I think. So maybe a staff report back on what if we moved it in front of the scales and had a separate drop-off location.
I don't know if staff want to even consider it. We are going a bit off topic, but yeah,
my advice is that if staff's recommendation remains, but if that's not agreed to by the board, if you want us to provide some further information or options, we can always do that for the next meeting.
all right. Director Kerr. Oh, Director Kerr, did you have a question, or was that your hand up? Okay, that was from the last time. Okay, I have no more hands up. So I'm going to call the question on receipt first. Is there anyone opposed to receipt of the request to waive fees? Okay, seeing none, that is carried. And I have Director Abram. Did you want to move a recommendation? Or is that a question? Oh, no. Okay.
Sorry, are we now on the recommendation?
Was that it? Oh, okay. Would anyone like to move a recommendation, or?
I'll move the staff
Yes.
recommendation.
Second.
Okay. That's first and seconded by. Now comments to that recommendation. Director Abram.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to unmute and I got missing. I just wanted to say that for all the reasons articulated by Director Adams earlier, I cannot support this recommendation. So I'll be opposing it when you get to the vote.
Okay. And Director Adams?
Propose we just call the question, please.
Yes, I can. I will call the question. I think I might just poll the board because I think there's probably, a few more negatives. So Director Abrams.
Opposed.
Okay. Director Adams.
Opposed.
Director Anderson.
This is the recommendation as presented by staff?
Yes.
Opposed.
Okay. Director Arbor. In favor. And alternate Director Polson.
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay. And do we have either Director Lewis or Director Colburn on the line? Okay, I don't think so. Director Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Okay. Director Cornfield.
Opposed.
Director Davis.
Opposed?
Okay. And I am in favor. Director Grieve.
Opposed.
Director Lee. In favor. Director Evans.
Opposed.
Director Kerr.
Opposed.
And either Director Moglove or Director Dahl on the line? I don't think so. Director Hillian
In favor.
and Director Morin.
In favor.
Director Minions
In favor?
and Director McCollum,
In favor.
alternate Director Sullivan
In favor?
and alternate Director Bissinger,
In favor.
Director Unger,
Opposed?
Director Wally.
Opposed.
Okay, if you can just wait a second, I'll see what this is a weighted vote, so.
Excuse me, Chair,
Yes.
was Director Cole Hamilton polled?
Yes, he was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So the total is 44 in favor out of 77, so the motion is carried. Right? Yes. All right, so thank you everybody for that. We are going to move on to item number 4, the management report dated January 2021 for receipt.
Move receipt.
Receipt.
Moved and seconded. Does anyone have any questions on the management report? Director Cornfield?
Yes, could on item 10, I'm just switching to my visible report. Item number 10 on page 2, which was that, and this goes back to November 14, 2019, that staff be directed to submit an application to Recycle BC for a recycling depot at the south end of Campbell River. And the action was they're waiting response. Now that's well over a year. And I was wondering, could we have an update on getting that south end recycling depot set up?
Thank you very much, Director. And Mark Rutten or Jesse, could you provide an update?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are still awaiting a response. So we can, based on this question, we can follow up again and try to elicit a response from Recycle BC.
Does it require any motion from the board to put some pressure on them to answer?
We will make the inquiry as staff, but if the board wishes to exert that political pressure, a resolution to that effect would be in order.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Director Unger?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question on item 2, the Gold Road Transfer Station. I know after the last meeting that Mark sent an email out to my CEO explaining the ongoing of the vote and the matter. And he suggested, or he said that Jesse would be reaching out to CEO Brad McRae. And I just want to know at this time from our emails, Jesse has not reached out yet to us, please, and just like know when he will.
Yeah, through the, sorry, sorry.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know about that. Yes, Director. Yeah, apologize. Just came back on from holidays here, and so hoping to set up a meeting next week with with your CAO.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Abram.
Yeah, just to comment on the report, as was mentioned by Mark, an item comes up, Charlie brings up the item, it's been a year old, and we haven't heard. Could I just make a suggestion that when we, as a board, pass a motion to do something, for an action, like find out about a recycling depot or whatever, if I could suggest that prior to the next meeting of whether it's the committee or whether it's the other committee, of staff people, that we make an inquiry as to what's the latest, whether we're asked to or not, that we just go ahead and inquire, so that when we come to this committee, we'll have the latest information and we don't have to take up time asking for it. Just a suggestion.
Chair and directors, thank you very much for the suggestion, and we'll take that. We'll take that advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Just a quick question on item 15, which is the last item on the management report. What is block M? I have a senior's moment, can't remember anything about block M. I remember block J.
Mark, that refers to ground lands there.
Yes. So I might need to call on Jesse to help me with this. I'm hoping he has the management report in front of him, but there are several blocks that make up the landfill site. So I believe that the landfill site itself is block M.
Yeah, sorry, just reading it. Yeah, that's
Campbell
correct.
River?
When we aligned the property boundaries, some of the blocks got renamed. So block M is our current landfill, which used to be block C before.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Director Unger, did you have another question? Or sorry, Director Cornfield?
Yes, I did. Just one quick one. The purchase of carbon credits, which was line item 12 on the management report. And I noticed that it had been put in last year's budget, but not spent. And it's showing us, I think, being carried forward to 2021. So I thought of purchasing carbon credits should be a very simple, straightforward thing in terms of an acquisition. So any rationale for not having spent it last year?
Yes, thank you. So you're correct. We have carried that forward. We do intend to try to come to an agreement with Cowichan Energy Alternative Community Carbon Marketplace. We did work closely with them in 2020, but we couldn't come to an agreement on what we thought would be an acceptable number of tons for the price. So we're just having taking a little bit longer to work with this organization and get to a place where we're getting good benefit for the dollars that we're spending in terms of removing carbon. And so that's why we're asking for it to be carried forward.
Okay, and because the budget shows this as continuing on at a much reduced, the $3,900 versus $163 in the 5-year financial plan. Do we, like I fail to see why we would be purchasing carbon credits, which would be a one-time only, and then we're dropping back to the same thing. So
yeah, so I think there's two lines in the budget actually, and the line that you just referred to at the lower amount, the $3,000 amount, that's our normal carbon offsets that we need to pay for the fuel and energy that we use at our different facilities.
Right.
So that line item you'll see repeated over the 5 years at that smaller value. This 160,000 is included in a different line budget, and is specifically for not implementing a gas collection system at Campbell River as per the regulation in the time required by the regulation. So this was a way for us to show that we're serious about our impact on the environment, and we're willing to buy these credits, and we do plan to install the gas system as part of the closure project in the next few years.
super, thank you very much. That makes everything really clear.
Okay, I'm just double checking. Director Unger, did you have another question or was your hand up?
Oh, sorry, I thought I took it down.
That's all right.
All
No
right,
problem.
it's down now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call the question on receipt. All those, anyone opposed to receipt of the management report? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. Oh, sorry, we have Director Arbor.
No, thank you. It would be for new business.
Okay, so under new business, go ahead, Director Arbor.
Thank you. I know it's not in the practice of this board to bring items up under new business, but because we had inside the financial plan, we actually had a conversation that ended up bridging to the yard waste issue that I think a lot of people agree with. which is the fire program and the chipping and the removal of the chips. I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate to ask staff to come back with a little report next time, or if I'm more ambitious, to propose a motion that we write a letter to the province outlining perhaps that the feedback from residents and us as elected leaders, that it seems like the chips are very valuable. They pose less of a fire risk than loose material. And that I certainly have received a lot of feedback on Hornby that people were quite jarred that they could not keep the chips and that they were getting shipped off. So I'm wondering, with the advice of our CEO and the chair, whether what would be the right course, if you would, and if the board would entertain a motion today, or if you would prefer to prepare a staff report with a request for that.
Might I suggest that you motion to ask for a staff report that's done in collaboration with the CAO of the Strathcona Regional District?
Okay.
So if the chair will entertain, I'd like to propose a motion as per that staff comes back with a report as after consulting with the CEOs of the regional districts. And
Second.
Okay. Obviously supported. And are there any comments or questions on that motion? Did everybody understand that it's a motion that refers staff to work in collaboration with the CEO of the Strathcona Regional District to come back with a report on the chipping and removal of the chips specific to the fire hazard reduction projects? I believe Director Grieve.
Yes, just to reiterate, it might be helpful if we, on personal levels, send a email to our respective MLAs on some of that.
Okay. Would that be included in?
Those will be the options that will be presented in the staff report. What level of communication you might want to undertake.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I will call the question on that motion. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, hearing and seeing none, that motion is carried. Thank you. So there's no other new business or addendums. I would
move termination.
Termination has been moved.
Second.
And we've already cleared up the hospital. So thank you, everybody. The meeting's terminated. Have a good rest of your day.